daily. That happened to us. I no sooner got up there, and they told Lenny and I, this is a few days after we were up on this these mountaintops, that we couldn't participate because they were paranoid that we were going to get killed. I thought that was pretty neat that they allowed us to get up there, but now we couldn't get back. The helicopters that came in, literally, they dropped their supplies from the air because the enemies were tied to tree tops and we were shooting the helicopters out of the sky. Every now and then we got medevacs out. We lost a lot of men because we couldn't get them out. And they threw a lot of problems because our lines were getting overrun. Again, like the movie Platoon, they had to call artillery in right on top of us to try to stop the enemy many times. And they started concentrating us back onto less mountaintops to try to concentrate our numbers. And our platoon was assigned to the same mountaintop that battalion headquarters was on. Our whole company was assigned to that mountaintop. And they assigned Smitty, Lenny, and I to a spot and said, "You can't go anywhere until we can get a helicopter in here to take you out of here." We were completely divorced from our platoon. Another man had taken over my squad, and he was making the best of it. We saw them; they were right out in front of us every day. So they still saw us, and we saw them. But we didn't go out on any patrols. We didn't do any ambushes, which I'm not complaining about, especially in that terrain. And then one day, the battalion supply sergeant came run up the jungle trail and said, "There's a helicopter coming in." He said he'll land, and if you want to try to get out of here, get up to the landing zone. So we grabbed our gear and ran up to the landing zone and literally dove onto this helicopter and took off. And that was the last I saw of that part of Vietnam.
They knew that we were there, okay? They didn't know exactly where, but they had a pretty good idea. Obviously, we knew that they were there, but we couldn't see them. We had to rely on a guy, because of the vegetation, we had a guy to my rear up in a tree that had no leaves on it. Okay, I don't know how he didn't get spotted, but and he was telling us through hand signals how many there were coming down our way and where they were. So, and I was right on the road, but I was just down like a little elevation. It's probably 3 feet down from the road, only about 4 or 5 feet away from the road. And all I had in front of me was a little opening in the bushes. And that's what I was relying on to see what was coming through there. So I'd look through that, I'd look back up into the tree, and this fellow up in the tree is telling me, they're getting 7 feet, 6 feet, and so on. And I don't know, I must have looked up at the wrong time to him, and as I turned around, I looked through this opening, and I had my weapon sticking through this opening. Not through it, but back enough. And he's standing right there, their point man. And, we saw each other at that point, and he had his weapon slung across him like this, facing me. And it was just a matter of timing. I mean, it was fate. He could have pulled his trigger as fast as I pulled mine, but he didn't. And I pulled mine. But before I pulled it, I remember I could see him. I looked right in his eyes. And he was an older man. I was 19, I guess. He looked like he was maybe, 30-ish, which seemed old to me then. Seasoned. And I just pulled back on the trigger, and I had a 30-round banana clip, and I emptied the whole thing into him. And he just fell. Matter of fact, he didn't even fall at that point. It hit him so fast that he was still standing. He must have been dead. Then he just fell right over.
You did because it was there. You continued. You did not stop. There were days that it hurt. There were days that we cried. There were days when the losses were so great that you didn't cry about the decision you made. You cried about the fact that the decisions were there to happen.
You hope that those who are dying, if they do die quickly. For the others, you hope that they make it. For some of them who were not hit badly, in some cases, they'd come into the center and see you later, and it's refreshing to know that you know, something can happen and you can make amends, and things keep going on. In many cases, we would see fellows that we had not programmed with directly, but were out in areas that we knew, and they were just blown to pieces in many ways. And you would talk to them, and they would recognize you, and they want to show you their wounds. And we weren't nurses, so it's kind of hard to stand there and look at details and body parts and not be affected by it.
The hand grenade blew up about 6 to 12 inches away from my left knee as I was sort of half lying, half kneeling on the ground. It blew away my kneecap right then and there, shattered the end of the femur so that pieces of the bone were just broken and splintered, put shrapnel all up and down the left side of my body. I've got some in the palm of my hand, back of my hand, had a couple of pieces in my left eye, a piece almost dead center in the tip of my nose, 3-inch cut under my left arm. Both eardrums were broken by the concussion of the hand grenade. Also, I remember being on the helicopter. I remember them taking me off the helicopter, putting me on a gurney, and rolling me into triage, I guess.
And the word triage is French, and it means sorting out. And what you would do, and it's kind of hard to imagine in this land where everyone is given every opportunity to survive, triage means you pick those that have the most chance of living and give them the absolute best. Those that have no chance of living or will be, say, most of their brain has been damaged by the wound or whatever, and that you know that even if you establish an airway, there is no quality life left for that individual, those persons would be left aside. So they may be alive, and in our society here, they may be the one who requires the most attention, but in Vietnam they would be the one that would be left for last. Kind of a sobering thing the first time you do it, and we had an expression that we would put someone behind the screen, and it was a dignified place where they weren't stared at by anybody else, and we tried very hard to get to them so they weren't alone when they died.
We were not nurses, we were what was back home. And their reaction was very different, so that they constantly wanted to know if they react to me okay, I guess it's okay, and I can go home and face my family. My mother won't say you're ugly, my wife won't leave me right away, or hopefully at all. So they were testing in that manner. I think specifically of a young man who we had gone into the ward, and the corpsman knew he was pretty ugly. And they had covered his face, and the body obviously was exposed. So you could see a lot of the damage and the bandages and the other problems he had. But they had covered his face, and we went through the ward, and coming back we kind of dilly-dallied along the way, and as we were going out the corpsman took the bandages or the gauze and covers off of him. And I remember looking over there because I saw the motion, and I knew that it was not going to be pretty. And this kid was just a mess. I mean, he looked like a lot of pus and drainage and blood and crust and unpleasant. But I went over and I talked to him. He was obviously moving, so he was responding. He knew he could hear the girls' voices in the ward, but he had a tiny, tiny, tiny little hole in his bandage over one eye. And I don't know what made me do it, but I went over and I talked to him, and I just looked straight in the little peephole in his eye, and I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" I mean, they're not doing fine, but it was just standard answer. And he just responded so beautifully. I mean, there was just something that undescribable that made you want to continue talking to him.
There were Marines following past us going home, and they would not say a word to us. They wouldn't even look us in the eye. And I was mad at them. I expected, a thumbs up or good luck or something. But yet, when I was coming home, I was walking down that fence, and there were Marines going towards the terminal, going to Vietnam. I realized the very same thing. There was absolutely nothing that I could tell them. Good luck is not an appropriate thing. I mean, there's no way of saying good luck to the level that they need good luck, or to even prepare them for the pain, not even being wounded pain, just the pain of survival.
Not only was Vietnam unlike any previous war, but when it came time to come home, home was no longer what it had been. America was going through some profound changes. Civil rights had challenged our sense of justice. Gas lines challenged our patience. And the Vietnam experience challenged not only our patriotism, but faith in the nation itself.
Coming home was probably the rudest awakening that I had to experience, even though we felt some of the the discontent and the dislike for our role in Vietnam when I was going overseas. Coming home now with a different set of values for life and appreciation for our country and the things that we have. And there's not enough I can say about that appreciation. But what I was greeted by, it really changed. Knowing Vietnam changed me a lot. The things that I dealt with and have to deal with. But coming back to society changed me as much as my experiences in Vietnam.
So we got on the plane, and any Vietnam veteran who did come home by plane will remember this experience. We got on the plane on the runway and waited and started down the runway, and just as the wheels get off the ground, the plane goes absolutely crazy, yelling, screaming, crying, hats throwing in the air, that we've made it.
Well, I came home twice, though, okay, because I had extended. So I came home once, went on leave for 45 days, partied hard, and then had to go back over. My mother almost killed me. But the first time I came home was different than the second time I came home. First time I came home, I was a real hero. I couldn't walk into a restaurant or bar without being lavished with drinks and food, and the only thing they didn't give me was money. And I wore my uniform. I wore it proudly. And the second time I came home, which was 9 months after that, and if I had to get a year, it was latter part of '68. Now, by that point, the anti-war movement here was starting to really percolate, and I wasn't being viewed the same way that I was the first time through.
I think that after 1970, which is your latter phase, people began to realize that this whole thing was senseless. I mean, people didn't even want to go to Vietnam, let alone be there. So I think during that last phase of Vietnam, there was less being done. I mean, I think veterans, troops were more privy to information in the latter 70s than we were in the 60s. For example, the idea that the public was led to believe that they were winning the war, when if you were over in the 70s, you knew that was not the case, okay? I think you had a culmination of realities that were adhered to even by officers, okay? Whereas in the early 60s, you just did what you were told.
That took a while to get home. When I got to San Francisco, I checked in finally and was stripped of all military identification, anything that I really had of Vietnam, and pretty much just left out on the street to say, okay, you were there, thanks, see ya.
From St. Albans, I was discharged in December 17th, 1970, and then February 23rd, I was given a temporary disability retirement from the Army, and then a year later I was given a permanent medical discharge by reason of my wound.
They were doing that to me at the West Haven VA, and the woman was talking to me, and she was saying, you just got back from Vietnam? I said, yeah. Gee, how was it over there? She'd ask me these different questions. And of course, there was a standard list of questioning that people would ask you. Did you kill anybody? And the more questions she asked, and the more I responded,